Years later, I still remember the day that I read that quote. I was on the bus back from school like any ordinary day, just scrolling on Reddit, where I read one short quote that would change the trajectory of my future. That quote was by Epictetus, and it goes like this. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the view which they take of them. Now that quote sounds fairly simple on the surface, but it opened up a rabbit hole, and that hole kept growing and growing and growing and growing in front of me, and I jumped into it. I kept going down, and when I came out of the hole, it genuinely felt like I was in a completely different world than before. What Epictetus means by this is that whenever you feel a negative emotion, it is your thoughts that cause that negative emotion to happen. Not the world around you, not events that happen, but it is rather your thoughts about those events that caused you to feel that negative emotion. Imagine two people are driving in a car right next to each other, they've got the same circumstances, and they both pull up into traffic. The first person thinks, oh no, this is so frustrating, why is everybody out at this time? And he gets angry because of those thoughts. The second person gets into traffic, but they think, wow, now's an opportunity for me to practice my patience. Same events, different thoughts, different emotions. It's kind of like water going through a pipe. Most people believe that it is the event that is directly connected to the emotion, but Epictetus believed that in between event and emotion, there are thoughts, and that you can directly control your thoughts, and therefore you can directly control your emotions. And understanding this gave me a superpower. When negative events happened to other people, they would get upset, they'd be thrown off of their best game, but I could control my thoughts and I could control my emotions. So I had that power that nobody else had. It made me feel on top of the world. Until I started to notice a few cracks. And if these cracks kept growing, they would break down the whole wall. So let's talk about toxic positivity. Now, looking back to when I first read this quote, it wasn't just the quote in and of itself that got me so bought into this idea of endless positivity. It was actually the scientific studies that were done around this topic. Psychologists discovered that there's an important distinction between emotions in the scientific sense and emotions in the psychological sense. And Stoicism came to a similar conclusion, separating impressions, which is your automatic response to events that is unconscious and is immediate, with assent, which is the second thought that you have about an event, and that is something that you can control. And that, in reality, if we ignore emotions that are originating from the amygdala, the fight or flight response systems, emotions are actually cognitively assembled conscious feelings, which means that our emotions are actually a conscious construction of the mind. And when I read the blog posts about this, I was shocked. How did the Stoics do it 2,000 years ago? They're breaking new scientific ground than modern day scientists. So whenever a negative event would happen, I would just redirect my thoughts. Whenever a bad thing happened, I would always find the silver lining in every single dark cloud. And I would focus on that silver lining intensely until it magnified, until I could barely see the dark cloud anymore. I felt happy, I felt grateful, I felt confident. This stuff genuinely impacted my life a lot. Don't just view the title and think that all positivity is bad. No, this kind of a positivity dramatically improved my life. It improved my life so much I started a YouTube channel where I talked pretty much exclusively about Stoicism and how this concept had impacted my life so significantly. When I didn't get the grades that I wanted, I would just redirect my thoughts. If somebody was mean to me, not a problem. I'll just redirect my thoughts. But then, when I was climbing a crane, I had broken into a construction yard, climbed up the crane, walked across on the beam. Whilst it was raining, I would redirect my thoughts. And I didn't feel fear because I could control my thoughts. I didn't feel anything. And that's when I started to notice that these cracks were actually growing and that this endless positivity has a darker side to it. The first crack was suppressed emotions. You see, 99% of the time, if you redirect your thoughts towards something positive, that's okay. But 1% of the time, I wasn't just redirecting my thoughts towards positivity, I was simply suppressing negative emotions. And when you suppress something, it's kind of like getting a piece of bread and chucking it to the back of your cupboard. Over time, it's going to rot, it's going to mold, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. There was a scientific study where they got two groups of people and they got them both to watch open wound surgeries, really graphic, really disturbing. The first group were just told to watch it like normal and their emotions were calculated at the end. And the second group were asked to watch it, but to not show any kind of emotions as they watched it. The second group ended up feeling emotions far stronger than the first one because they were asked to suppress their emotions. For some things, this endless positivity isn't beneficial. It's better to focus on the negative, to really understand the emotion, and when you do that, it will get dispelled. Instead of bottling it up and shaking it up where eventually it might pop off, you focus on it, you deal with it, and you let it go in a healthy manner. If we don't do this and we suppress our emotions, we start to live inauthentically. It's like we're living with a mask on in front of us. We're not really being ourselves. We're not really showing the world who we actually are. And this can cause a huge disconnect. It can cause a lot of internal problems. As Carl Jung says, everybody has a shadow. Everybody has a dark side. And instead of suppressing and pushing away that dark side, we've just got to learn to accept it. And I also want to make it incredibly clear here that I'm not blaming Stoicism. The Stoics are incredible people that you can learn a lot from, and everything they said was correct. It is simply my misinterpretation of the Stoics that caused the problem. It is my fault 100%, not theirs. In fact, I'm actually agreeing with what they have to say, because if we expand their thoughts a little bit more, here's what Seneca has to say. It is better to conquer our grief than to deceive it. For if it has withdrawn, it starts up again, and from its very respite gains force to savage us. I'm not going to recommend you cheer yourself up by going on vacation, going through your accounts, or distracting yourself. All of those things help only for a short time. They do not cure grief but hinder it. I would rather end it than distract it. So positivity is focusing on the good in life and being grateful. Toxic positivity is ignoring the bad in life and suppressing your emotions. Now, imagine it's a cold day. You wake up in the morning, you throw on a coat, you go outside walking through the brisk air, and you go and you get yourself a lovely takeaway latte. You walk away, it warms up your hands, you take a sip. How do you feel? Pretty happy, pretty positive, pretty cozy. For me, because of my misinterpretation, I felt nothing. You see, when I turned off the tap between negative events and negative emotions, I also kind of turned off the tap between positive events and positive emotions. I almost didn't feel anything. And this is clearly not good. You want to feel positive emotions, right? As well as that, you can actually use emotions, negative, positive, whatever, to guide you to live a better life. If you're thinking about quitting a job and you feel scared, it's probably because you don't know what other options you could have and maybe you feel a little bit lost. If you're thinking about losing a friend and you feel worried, it's probably because you value that friend. We can use emotions as pieces of information, as data, to help us piece together the kind of life we want to live and to gain an insane amount of self-awareness. If you shut off emotions, you lose that capability as well. So my girlfriend's a nurse, and sometimes she'd come back home after a long hard day, working on her feet, all of the horrific things that she'd seen, and she'd start telling me about them. My response was very simply that it is not the negative event that is making you sad, it is rather your thoughts about that event. Oh no, this is not a good strategy, I'm telling you, don't do this. It is not effective. Whilst for some people, you can control your thoughts, and it may be true, assuming you don't have a chronic illness or mental health problems, you can control your thoughts, but this is not what people want to hear. This is not an effective strategy. Empathy is the best way to go. People don't want you to solve their problems. People want you to feel with them, and by feeling with them, their problems go away. And this problem gets amplified when we talk about people with mental health problems, because telling them that tomorrow's going to be better, you just need to be positive, why are you being so negative? That is not an effective strategy, because perhaps tomorrow will not get better. Perhaps this is something that they're going to have to deal with for the rest of their life. And by telling them that tomorrow's going to get better, you're telling them inadvertently that when tomorrow gets better, then we can talk more. I don't accept you for who you are. We'll wait for things to get better, then we can talk about this. Instead, Love somebody for the position that they're in now. Don't constantly be trying to fix them. Just love them. And to be a positive vibes only kind of person, whilst it seems great, in reality, it can cause a lot of grief. At the end of the day, there is no one piece of advice that rings true for everybody. Context matters a lot, so you've got to take into the personal context of your life when applying any of this stuff. The world isn't all sunshine and rainbows, but it's also not all grey clouds and rain. Positivity is great. Positivity can greatly impact your life, but just be careful of the minor nuances that can be fallen into when you go into the world with positive vibes only. And with a topic like this, it's really impossible for me to hit the nail on the head of every single point, and there's loads of points that I didn't cover here. Perhaps I put too much emphasis on some points, not enough on other points. So I would love for you to carry on the conversation in the comment section below. Correct me at the parts you don't agree with. I would love to learn alongside you guys. If you've enjoyed this video, then click the like button and comment down below, like I said. Also, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video.